بینندگان گرامی، به برنامه افغانستان به روایت افغانها خوش آمدید. هدف این برنامه معرفی هنرمندان و متفکرین افغان به جامعه جهانی است تا بتوانیم بحثی که درباره امور کشور ما و مردم ما میشه معرفش خود ما باشیم. برنامه ما به زبان انگلیسی است و صحبت با هر مهمان در مورد یک مطلب مختلف. امید است که این برنامه ها را با جوان ها هم شما در میان بگذارید تا باعث تشویقشان شود و آنها هم در این بحث ها اشتراک کنند. بنده میثاق کاظمی هستم، یک فیلمساز متولد کابل و فعلا مقیم کالیفرنیا. تشکر و از قصه مهمان امروز ما لذت ببرید.
Everyone, you guys are watching another episode where we talk with Afghan Americans, get to know their lives, so you can see how similar or different we are, and what we share in common with the rest of the world, what's unique to Afghans and being Afghan. And today I'm really excited to have Fallon Zohal Ferguson with me and get to know all about her. I'm going to start a little bit of brief background, starting with your grandma, if that's okay. And you'll know why. So, Fallon, why don't you, tell us about your grandma.
Yeah, well, my grandmother, her name is Habiba. She's the very first example of feminism to me. She left Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation, right after she had lost her husband, my grandfather. She had 3 children to care for in the middle of Kabul, and she decided that because of the occupation, because of the war, and because of her circumstance, this isn't a life for her kids. So she decided that she has to leave behind her home that she loved very much and set foot to America. And when she decided to leave to America, it was a very long process. She had to stop in Iran, then from Iran to Germany, and then from Germany finally to America. And she had to bring her children over one at a time, and then they would all finally settle in America. And it was a very long process. She originally she wanted to study nursing. She wanted to be a nurse before the occupation, and unfortunately it didn't work out. So she went to Iran and she started doing like small nursing jobs, like interning as a nurse, but she was never really be able to become a nurse until she left to Germany, and then from Germany finally to America. And then when she came to America, because she didn't really speak English that well, she could only really get a job cleaning universities and schools and things like that. And then within 5 years, she learned the language as quickly as she could. She worked 2 jobs, and then she finally started her own business, which was an assisted living, and she was finally able to support all of her children. And she did that all by herself, and I could not be more proud to be her granddaughter.
That's wonderful. And how many kids did she have?
3.
Including your mom. Okay, 2
Yes.
more, including your mom. And she moved to New York. Is that where she was?
Yeah, she moved to New York. Yeah, she moved to New York City. Her first place that she worked at cleaning was New York University.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so wow. She was traveling between Queens and New York, Queens and New York, Queens and New York every single day.
Wow, that's wonderful. Wow. And you were born in New York, speaking of which. Yeah, where around New York were you born?
I was actually born on the border of Brooklyn and Queens, like around there.
Okay.
It's kind of like it's a really like weird area. You don't know if it's Queens, you don't know if it's Brooklyn. Yeah, and ever since I was little, I grew up in so many different diverse communities. The apartment building we grew up in, there weren't just Afghans. There were Puerto Rican Americans, Dominican Republican Americans. Right. There were Chinese Americans, Japanese Americans. So I grew up around so much cultural diversity, and each community taught me so many different things.
Was it like in the Heights? Have you seen the Heights?
I have. It's semi-accurate. I mean, not really burst into song and dance, but yeah.
When I was in Queens, I don't know if you knew, but somebody told me that there's actually a Jewish synagogue, an Afghan Jewish synagogue.
Yes.
I don't know if you knew about that. I
Yeah,
never
actually,
got to see it, but that's pretty interesting.
there's actually a very large Afghan Jewish community, and specifically Flushing in Queens.
Yeah.
And it's a very large community, and even the non-Afghan Jewish population speaks Dari. That's how big the community is.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
God. Oh my
I
God.
know. It's very surprising. I was like, no way. I never thought I would be able to witness that. And then when I finally saw it for the
Wow.
first time, I was like, this is so cool. Yeah.
That is so crazy. Oh, I wish I get to go see that.
Oh,
The closest, the
they're
closest
the
experience.
best.
Yeah, the closest experience I had with that was when I was in India, in Delhi, and there was the Sikh population, the Afghan Sikh population, and they were
Yes.
speaking in Pashto and Farsi, and I was like, what? It just, like you never, because you always imagine them in movies and everything, or what we know Sikh people associated with Hindi, and you seeing
Yeah.
them speak Farsi, you're like, wow, that's so crazy, that's so cool.
Crazy.
Right?
I know.
And that speaks to the diversity of the Afghan culture and diaspora. I think people think, media shows us as just being these, one side sort of people, but, kind of does not speak about the diversity that much. And that's kind of why the series is to kind of showcase perhaps the diversity of Afghans, including yourself. And do you speaking of languages, do you speak any of the Afghan languages?
I do. I speak Dari. I have a bit of a Herati accent when I speak Dari.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, because my grandmother, she is from Kabul, but on my father's family, we're half Herati, and so is my mother. My mother's family, my grandmother's family, was also from Herat, but she moved to Kabul when she was a girl. So yeah mostly Herati.
Yeah. Herat is a city close to Iran. So what you're talking about is the accent is a little more Iranian on the Iranian side than it would be on the other side, which is beautiful. All accents are beautiful. And the Persian language, you mentioned it as Dari, is kind of shared language between three countries: Afghanistan, Iran, and Tajikistan. And it's called different. It's called Farsi in Iran, Dari in Afghanistan, and Tajiki in Tajikistan. But it's all the same language, just different beautiful accents.
It's interchangeable. It all has just its own influence depending on where you're at.
Yeah. And did that sort of being raised in such a diverse culture and kind of seeing so much different diversity and beauty around you, did that kind of influence what you're doing right now as a curator? You're kind of a junior curator at a museum here in LA, and I wanted to start there. Kind of how does that influence your background and interest with what you're doing right now?
Oh, 100,000%. If I did not have the diversity that I had growing up, I would not be able to see beauty in everything. And I think that definitely is what my artistic identity is built around, is being able to see beauty in everything and being able to understand multiple perspectives and multiple cultures and multiple aesthetics as well. So I'm just so grateful that, we didn't have much growing up. I didn't have much growing up, but to be able to be in a community where there's so much diversity and beauty, it inspired me to create. It inspired me to honor those cultures without appropriating them, of course, but inspired me to know more about humanity, see what else is out there. And that's what created my artistic drive and my artistic hunger, and also my passion for human rights. It made me realize that despite the fact that we all have our cultural differences and diversities, we're still all one human. We're all human at the end of it. Sorry, I can't talk today. We're all human.
Great for not being able to talk today.
Thank you. I hope so. But yeah, I realized that diversity isn't something that shouldn't be taboo. It's something that should be celebrated. Most people think diversity creates conflict, but I think it's something that if you respect and you don't appropriate it, you can celebrate it and honor it.
Right.
And that's why,
I'm going to get to your human rights work as well. I kind of wanted to establish you as your art and your work and as an artist as well. I know you do oil paintings. We could have actually had that be a background for, as we were choosing a background for this. That could have been one. But hopefully we can put some links to your artwork. Tell us a little bit about your artwork and how did that begin? At what age and what sort of art is it, would you say?
Well, I remember I picked up a pencil at a very early age. I was around, I picked a pencil like to draw. I was around probably 4 or 5. And, you know, we were teaching how to write and learning how to write and stuff like that. And I looked at the blank piece of paper, and I don't know why, but to me, I just was like, you know what? No, I'm going to do whatever I want on this piece of paper, and I'm going to draw what I want. I want to create my own world. So when I was 5, I tried to draw my own world. And ever since then, it became addicting. It became a sort of escapism for me, and not just escapism, but it also became a sort of a vice and a passion to create, to be able to appreciate things, to express my perspective on things.
Yeah, makes sense. How often do you get to do them? Because I think the style you were mentioning is hyper-realistic oil paintings. So I'm sure it takes like a week to do one. How often do you get to do them?
Oh gosh. So yeah, I started when I was 5. I went from like small child drawings and fantasy drawings. Then when I was 15, 16, I got serious and started doing realistic drawings, hyper-realism. And first started off with colored pencils, and then when I moved on to oil painting, I cannot tell you how how amazing but also stressful the process is, because you want to get something done, you want to get your idea down on the canvas, but you have to take a lot of time. It takes a lot of time. Like to draw one feature, to draw the tip of a finger, it should take you at least like 4 to 6 hours, or at least that's how long it would take me. Because the thing is, the slower you go, the more detailed you become, and the more attention to detail you have. You begin to notice things that aren't really there. Because the number one thing I was taught in art is draw what you see, not what you think you see. Like, yeah, when you look at child's...
What does that mean? What does that mean? That sounded good. I don't know what that means.
Okay, well, when you look outside and you look at the sun, and you look at a child's drawing, right? A child's drawing of a sun is like a giant yellow dot with like little sun rays coming out of it, little yellow lines coming out of it. Okay. That's not what the sun actually looks like, though. When you go outside, you see it's almost too bright to look at. So all you can do is just draw the beams and the colors coming out of it. Or, you know, a better example would be to draw a face. Usually when people draw a face, they draw an eyes, a mouth, and a nose, and eyebrows. But you also have to really pay attention to the shadows, the contours, the creases, the marks. You have to draw everything. It can't just be an eyes, a face, and a nose.
Right. Okay, that's a beautiful way of explaining it. I mean, as an artist, I think your heart is that's probably why it's so open to your social work, which you're kind of also studying and getting a minor in. I understand you're studying law at a university right now, but also minoring on human rights. Is that so as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm studying international trade law, and that was sort of my main focus because I really wanted to be able to empower people who want to start their own business in other countries. And then on the human rights side of it, I began to witness things growing up in the community that I did, like a lot of mistreatment and whatnot, or a lot of people that really deserved better. And I just wanted to be able to fight for that. I said, you know what, I can change this, and I'm going to change it. Because, you know, growing up, we're taught, well, you know, it takes like someone really big or someone really important to change it. And I'm like, okay, well then I'll become that someone, and I can change that. Right. So that's where it began. It began pretty early on when I started getting to know more about other cultures and seeing how they were integrated into the communities that I grew up in. Right.
And so, you know, this, as you mentioned that, I kind of almost feel that people who come from immigrant backgrounds or similar to us, kind of, do you think there's even a choice not to think about the world and giving back? Is there even a choice?
I totally get what you mean. Like, being like, I'm sure not just with Afghan immigrants, but being the child of any immigrant, you're never really 100% American, but you're not 100% of your ancestral land. You're kind of a mix in between the two. And some people do choose to like not think about it or choose to leave behind the community for understandable reasons, I'm sure. But I feel like when you see something happening to your ancestral land, whether you like it or not, it does affect you. It does affect you. Whether you choose to act on it or not is up to you. But I don't think you have a choice when it comes to not thinking about it. You're always going to think about it. It's always going to have this imprint on you. But I do think that people do have a choice to act on it or not. And I think that says a lot about how you're integrated into your own community or your ancestral land or where you stand.
Yeah. And that also brings me to the question that what was your relationship to Afghanistan and your community before the U.S. pulled out? Did you have a relationship? Was this a constant? Yeah, tell us a little bit, how was that relationship? Because then we can talk about it after and now, which you're like hyper involved. Like, yeah, what was the relationship before?
I mean, I'm going to be very honest. Because I grew up in such a diverse community, I did see a few Afghans here and there, and like, of course, I had lots of times with the Afghan Jewish population in Flushing. If I was as integrated as I am today, no, solely because, I was raised by a single mom, and my mom, she sort of felt like it was better for me to focus on me and like being able to make ends meet with just us. And we weren't really able to fully integrate into the communities because, it's a combination of things. It's also where we grew up. There weren't a lot of Afghans where we were. And then when I moved to California, I started creating my cultural identity in middle school. I started realizing like, okay, I'm Afghan. I love my culture. I'm very proud to be Afghan American. I'm proud of all the things my community has accomplished, my country has accomplished. So I began to really start looking at who I am. It wasn't until middle school when I started to find myself. And my cultural identity was a huge part of that. And before the U.S. pulled out, I was very active in terms of being able to advocate and wanting to advocate and giving my opinion and sharing petitions and things like that. But I wasn't really as hyper involved as I am today, knowing how bad the crisis got. And it's been really eye-opening because I didn't grow up with a lot of Afghans. Like I said, I had my times with them, but I wasn't really living beside them. I wasn't really living in the community. I was living in a very diverse community. So when I finally entered the community, it was this really amazing feeling of finding another part of myself that I feel like I never really got in touch with.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I was going to ask that. It's funny you answer my questions even before I think about them. Was when you're born in New York, what does identity look like to you? What does Afghan identity? You answered it a little bit, but what does it look like? What do you think it means to be an Afghan American? Given that you have not visited Afghanistan, I believe, yet, right? Or you
have
never been to Afghanistan. You've also just seen it in movies and books and TV, and So when you think of identity, what do you think is an Afghan American from your perspective, from who you are? What does that identity look like? What does it encompass?
Well, from my perspective, I feel like to be Afghan American, you are caught between two very different worlds in a sense of you're caught between the old world, the new world. Of course, we're very modern and innovative ourselves as Afghans, but you're also caught between 300 years of history and then like 2,000 years of history. And to be Afghan American, to me, it's one of the most beautiful cultures. And that's even coming from an unbiased point of view. where to be Afghan American, it means to have honor, to have integrity, to adhere to your morals, to be able to stand strong in your ground. You know, we come from a very heavy warrior culture. You know, a lot of it is based off of strength and independence and resilience. And to me, that's what it means to be Afghan American. And, you know, I know, like, you know, for diaspora compared to people, non-diaspora Afghans, you know, we are a little bit different in terms of we never really seen the homeland. We've never really been to it. We've only seen it in books and movies. So to non-diaspora Afghans, I understand that there's just like a little bit of a gap. However, I do feel like there's this immense sense of brotherhood and sisterhood within the diaspora and non-diaspora Afghans. And I feel like to be Afghan American is to keep our resiliency alive, is to keep strength alive, is to keep our history alive. To me, it means the world. It means the world to be Afghan American.
That's beautiful. Yeah. You mentioned resiliency. And I want to dig deeper and find out what are some other qualities that you think are essentially Afghan or you associate with being Afghan that you may have yourself or have seen it? Maybe not. I would say, okay, once I ask that question, I say, steer away from like what popular media may show, you know, in terms of like, you know, let's like maybe dig deeper into your own self and kind of say, okay, if there were certain aspects of you, some certain qualities, because I was actually reading this UN study, and there was this Native American who spoke about, she said, you know, every culture, because of the way we are in thousands of years of history, as you mentioned, every culture, whether it's newly formed governments like here or elsewhere, brings to the world a certain set of qualities, a set of virtues, a set of really unique offerings to the world, right? And she was saying that how digging deep into your own culture to see what does thousands of years of evolution has primed you to bring to this world is what is going to be so essential in finding yourself and being able to contribute to the world. And that really struck a chord with me. And this was a few years ago. And I kind of began to think, okay, what is essentially Afghan qualities that I have? And then what are American qualities that I have adopted? And I've also lived in India. And what were Indian qualities that I have brought with me, you know, to kind of see, you know, where does evolution bring us? So I'm going to put that question for you to kind of, and take a moment if you have to, kind of what are certain qualities that are essentially Afghan that you think you exhibit or you have seen in others?
Wow. I mean, that honestly is probably a question I've been waiting for. Okay. I've been waiting to answer this question. I mean, when you look at, like you said, pop culture, all we're really associated with is war and occupation and, like, you know, the battlefield playground. You know, we don't really have a culture or an identity in media, or we don't have, like, you know, the personal attributions or characteristics in media. We're, like, right now we're just a population of war when it comes to mainstream media. Mm-hmm. But what I think, a trait that is so Afghan that I have literally seen throughout the entire community, for me, is resiliency. Like I have mentioned before, is this undying strength and this undying hope. We are very hopeful people. To have gone through everything we have gone through in the past millennia alone, and to still have hope that one day Afghanistan will be able to free itself and will be able to stand together as a people, to me, that is incredible. I honestly can say that I've never really seen that. I've never really seen that as strongly as I've seen it now. Mm-hmm. And it reminds me of, like, anyone who gets through so much in their life, and resiliency, to me, that's an Afghan trait. To me, that represents everything that is Afghan, and not just resiliency, but also hospitality. Hospitality is a huge one in Afghan culture, I'm sure, as you know. You know, my mother used to tell me that if a guest goes hungry in your house, it's a sin on your head. That's what my mom would tell me, or my grandmother. Hospitality is a huge one for us because we love people. We're a land of very diverse. We have we're home to over I think
40 million.
Yeah, we're home to over 40 million, and it's also so many diverse tribes. So hospitality is literally an essential of our culture,
Mm-hmm.
You never ever turn away a guest from your home. That's something I've noticed in Afghan culture, and you always treat them to the best of your ability with whatever little you have.
Mm-hmm.
I follow this photojournalist, and she's an amazing woman who does amazing work, and she released a book called The Atlas of Beauty.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's basically a story of her and her camera, and she literally just travels around the world in the most obscure places of the world and takes pictures of women who have amazing stories behind them. And she offered me a whole new perspective of beauty. It's literally an atlas of beautiful women with amazing stories behind them. And she went to Afghanistan, and she mentioned that with whatever little they have, they will serve you like you're royalty, or like you're one of their own, like their family. And that's something I've noticed, and that's very Afghan, is hospitality and friendship. We're very, very friendly people. So resiliency, hospitality, and friendship, I think, are probably one of the biggest traits that I've seen across the diaspora.
You also mentioned one more, which you didn't say it in your conclusive statement, which I'm going to ask you about, which was the word hope. You said we were very hopeful people, and I was going to ask you, when the moment you mentioned that, I was going to say, okay, what are your hopes? What do you hope to do as a human being for these dual identities that you have, for these two countries that you call home, or for the world? What do you hope to contribute to the world, and how? What is on the hope side?
On the hope side, honestly, I really hope that I really just want to give back to as many as I can. Not because, I want to be like this Mother Teresa or like the saint or whatever, but solely because, being Afghan American, you kind of know what it feels like to have a country taken from you and stolen from you, and also to be in the face of oppression. So you want to help as many people as you can not go through that. And my hope is to be able to stop it where I can, when I can, however I can, is to stop exploitation and to, empower POC communities and empower immigrants that not just immigrate here to the US, but worldwide. I want to be able to do that, and just to be able to solely give people the tools to advance themselves and empower themselves. Empowerment's huge, because the saying, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man how to fish and he'll eat for a lifetime. I want to be able to do that for not just Afghanistan, but for any oppressed population, and also for girls worldwide and women worldwide.
That's your hope. That's your personal hope.
Yes.
And I hope you get to do that. I hope.
Thank you. I hope so too.
I hope so too. Well, that's beautiful. That brings us to a brief pause in this conversation. We hope to talk more soon and again. But it was really wonderful to just hear your story and kind of dig a little bit into your mind and heart, and to hear who you are and what you're hoping to do in life.
Thank you.
If you have any conclusive thoughts or comments, we'll take it right now.
Yeah, I mean, this is for the Afghan community, the Afghan diaspora. First off, thank you guys so much for allowing me to be involved, and also to everyone out there that wants to change, that wants to make a difference, whether you're Afghan or not, or whatever community you come from. You can make that difference. It's going to take a long time. It may take a long time. It may take your whole life. But if you want to, you can do it. And I honestly owe it to not just the Afghan diaspora, but Afghan people in general. Thank you for allowing me to be able to advocate and do work with you guys, and meet my my ancestral land, meet my home, meet my family. And I couldn't be grateful enough to be a part of this community. And I'm very human, so I'll probably make a mistake somewhere down the line. However, I could not be more honored to be a part of this community and for us to be family, all of us.
That is wonderful. And with that, we'll let you guys have a wonderful day, rest of your day or evening, whenever you're listening to this. And if you enjoyed that, please subscribe. There will be more of it. Thank you so much again, Fallon. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.